it is 5 o'clock, so I will call this meeting to order. Starting out with roll call.
Felicki Pineski here.
Alder Feldy. Alder Perala.
Here.
Were we able to get Alder Ackley on the phone?
Oh, we may not have a quorum.
That's okay. With our chair, we still have a quorum. Alders Feldy and Ackley are excused. Okay.
Oh, there she is.
All right. Well, then will you please all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Then we'll move on to item number 5, approval of the minutes. Do we have any discussion on the minutes from our last meeting? Seeing none, we'll be looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Chair votes aye. The ayes have it. The motion passes. Minutes are approved. And then, in the interest of time, if we can jump first to item number 10, if there are no objections from the committee, which is resolution number 131 of 2122, a resolution providing for the sale of approximately $2,215,000 of general obligation promissory notes, series 2022A.
250 million. Good evening. This resolution is for the sale of the bonds, the authorization of the sale of the bonds tonight for the 2022 capital project plan. So we do have Phil Costin from Ehlers online if there are any questions specific to the bond issuance. 22.
Questions from the committee members?
Bond issuance. Huh. Can't think of anything.
Okay. Seeing no questions then, we will be looking for a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Last call. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Chair votes aye. The ayes have it, and the motion passes. Okay. Do we want to do the bond comp? Oh, no, that's not Ehlers. Okay. Well, in that case, I'd like to thank the representatives from Ehlers for being on the line with us. That should conclude the
Thank you.
portion of our meeting.
Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. We will jump back up to item 6 then on the agenda, which is resolution number 23 of 2122. Submitting a claim from Randy Roth for alleged damages to his skid steer glass door when a stone hit it from a city worker's lawnmower.
This is before you just to report that this claim was denied, and so you'll just file the RO. The reason it was denied, we actually paid another claim related to this, and this was sort of a duplicate claim, and that one's already been taken care of. It's just sort of clearing out the books on this particular one that we denied it, and you can file the RO.
I move to file.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Seeing no other discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Chair votes aye. The ayes have it, and the motion passes. Next up, item number 7 is report of officer number 123 of 2122. Reporting that pursuant to resolution number 66 of 2021, authorizing the city administrator to negotiate settlement of certain claims made by the city of Sheboygan, city invoice number 6880 in the amount of $4,611.23, billed to Brian Denny regarding damage to a street light or sign located at the corner of 8th Street and Erie Avenue on April 4th, 2018, has been settled with a payment to the city of Sheboygan in the amount of $4,000. And then this one is another that's already been approved, so I believe we are going to be looking for another motion to file unless there are any questions or comments.
I move to file.
Second.
All right. Seeing no further discussion then, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Chair votes aye. The ayes have it. The motion passes. We are on to item number 8, which is resolution number 127 of 2122. A resolution authorizing the sale of city parking lot number 11, located adjacent to and immediately east of 513 North 8th Street to James T. Passmar.
Thank you, Chair. So the item before you tonight for consideration is a parking lot that is directly east of the George Michael's GM bar on A Street, south of the Econo Lodge. So this parking lot at one time had spanned between the businesses that front A Street on the east side of the street and the Salvation Army. Approximately 4 years ago, the city sold the southern half of this lot to Toby Watson, and that was combined with the property that he owns on the corner of the northeast corner of 8th and Pennsylvania Avenue. So this created a parcel of land of a parking lot of about 18 stalls north of that was really, it's a challenging lot for the city because there's no snow storage, there's very little other land with it. So if there's any type of other means that are needed, it's a liability, if you will, for the parking utility. So the owner of the George Michael's, James Passmar, came forward and offered to purchase that lot and to make it basically a private parking lot, working with the adjacent businesses to give them any type of parking that they might need. So the Transit Commission in January took up this item and unanimously approved it. The original offer was $23,000, and after verifying that and negotiating, we were able to negotiate a value of $30,000 based on the value that the city assessor thought the property was worth. So the recommendation is to authorize the sale of this parking lot for $30,000 to James T. Passmore. There's some electrical and some signage that would go with this that we've already worked with the Department of Public Works on how to separate that out, and basically to sell this parking lot to be used more on a private purpose than on a city purpose, because it is off the street. Not a lot of people know about it. We spend a lot of time maintaining it, and it seems like it would make more sense for it to be privately owned and those businesses work together back there versus the city providing the public parking in that location.
Questions or comments?
Makes sense.
Go ahead.
I just would like to have the comfort of the information that we are not tied for public parking spots in that area. That we are in good shape as far as availability of parking spots in that.
Correct. A lot of parking happens on the street in this area, and there's only, in talking with the parking utility, they've leased out maybe 4 stalls in there to other people, and they are able to move them to a different lot that it will still work for them. So there wasn't a huge amount of private parking payers, if you will, through the parking utility that get yearly permits to park in that lot.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we'll be looking for a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, then seeing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Chair votes aye. The ayes have it, and the motion passes.
Perfect.
Item number 9 is resolution number 130 of 21-22. A resolution authorizing entering into a development agreement with Corda Sheboygan LLC and NS Retail Holdings LLC.
Thank you. So Corda Sheboygan LLC and NS Retail Holdings is the new owner of the former Shopko store. As you recall, Shopko is being converted into Hobby Lobby and Ross Dress for Less. The total development incentive that was negotiated was $700,000. They will be investing about $4.6 million total in the investment for the new 2 stores on top of the current tax rate, that the current increment that's on that property. The Redevelopment Authority had made up $375,000 of that $700,000 investment through a business development loan based on the creation of 15 new jobs. And the $325,000 that was left had been originally agreed upon to come from the city's unrestricted general fund balance and be paid as an incentive to the project should they provide evidence by June 30th of 2022 that they invested $4.6 million. So the development agreement that's attached in the packet outlines those requirements. Basically, they need to invest $3.4 million in the new building and another $1.2 million in an outlot that they're developing on the south side of the Applebee's along Taylor Drive. So this was the final piece of the puzzle to try to put the development incentive together. The $700,000 is the gap in their pro forma. Actually, it's probably gone up a little bit, but they agreed to continue forward with the $700,000 and not ask for anything more. So this is an agreement, this is an approval of authorizing the execution of the development agreement in the amount of $325,000. What I would say is the city had did a loan with Wasserman Development when they redeveloped the building to the west of us here. And there was payment terms in that, a 5-year payment term, and to date, we've gotten payments of about $700,000 of that $1.4 million left. So this $325,000 would come from those repayments of that loan from the general fund. So if there's any questions, I would be happy to answer it. We did have some discussions on this in closed session.
Questions? Alder Flick-Paneski?
Thank you. I see that the evidence of the 4.6 million needs to be in by June 30th of 22. That's pretty close. So how do they provide that evidence within the timeframe?
They're going to have to provide some kind of documentation that they've indeed invested that amount of money by that date. They have the building permits and the contractors, and they're starting construction as we speak. So they have not said that that date wouldn't work for them, but we're going to have to get some type of certification from them that they have indeed invested that amount of money.
Okay, and if they say we need until August 1st, or if they say it's going to be $4,500,000, do we have recourse? Yeah, thank you.
I mean, this is the negotiated agreement. We've been back and forth with them a number of times on these terms, and they've agreed to that. If they want to make amendments at a later date, it's going to have to come back to you to approve those things. The agreement as written is what they're agreeing to sign off on.
Okay, and that's
And there is a section 202 refund of the incentive payment that if they fail to make the assessed value or the amount that we said that they shall refund the development incentive payment by January 31st of 2023.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Would you please kindly remind me how is that incentive calculation made? On the number of jobs created? No.
No, the business loan for 375 that the RDA, that was on the number of jobs. This is based on the value of the increment that they're going to invest into the property. So the amount of money they're going to put into the property is where that amount came from. And when they originally provided their financials and pro forma on the project, the 700,000 was the gap that they had in their pro forma over what it's costing them to build this from construction costs. So we had, actually was higher than that. We negotiated them down to the 700,000. But that was a number that was in their pro forma as their gap in the pro forma from what they're getting for rents to what it's costing them for construction. It's primarily, this 700,000 is primarily made up of the supply chain issues related to the driving of costs related to construction.
I just wonder briefly, so is there a formula that you use for this type of incentive, or is just, because this is not a loan, right? This is an incentive, so this $325,000.
It's basically a good way to put it would be a grant towards the project.
Okay.
And it's based on the cost, the increase in construction costs over and atop of what they're going to get for revenue from the tenants.
Oh.
So the lease tenant revenue and the construction cost to build this out created this gap of the 700,000.
And how did you decide to give, how the city decided for 325,000 instead? So I understand that.
We looked at it, the other side of this table, and said the business loan, we knew that they could create at least 15 new jobs, and we can give up to 25,000 per job. So we were able to give them the 375 out of our loan pool so that it lowered the city's risk of taking money out of the general fund to pay it. So we tried to maximize the loan piece, and then whatever basically was left was the city incentive piece. So the 375 and them being able to create 15 new jobs worked for them, and then that difference was this 325.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good.
Go ahead.
Thank you. The other thing to keep in mind is, once they start doing this, we begin collecting tax revenues. So it's kind of a win-win as we move forward.
The other thing to note is that you'll recall we wanted to keep this out of the TIF district. There's the Meyer TIF district is just to the north of this. And the goal at the time was to keep it out so we can start getting property tax increment right off the bat versus waiting 20 years for the TIF to close. And that's the reason why we couldn't necessarily use TIF dollars to make this 325 up, and why it's coming out of the general fund, so that I think the payback was 2.5 years, and we would then, the city would be paid back by the tax increment that they're paying, and we would get that within the next 2.5 years versus having to wait 10, 15 years.
If I can just add a few things, and Chad, please correct me if I misstate, but part of the spirit of this was the fact that we did have an empty building, Shopco, and we had two businesses that we really wanted to bring into the city of Sheboygan, one of which was Hobby Lobby, which we've heard about that as much, if not more, than our favorite restaurant, which we will not say. But anyway, Olive Garden's not coming. But again, to get it on the tax rolls, also the ability for potentially some additional development on that site. So we, the city, basically tried very hard for over a year working with them to get this opportunity. Thank you.
And just when we thought we had all the stores out there filled, then Bed Bath & Beyond announced that they were closing, so now we could fill another big box.
Lordy.
Good. Any other questions or comments? Seeing, or if not, rather, we are looking for a motion to approve on
I
this one.
move to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, then seeing no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Chair votes aye, the ayes have it, the motion passes. Thank you. Jumping over 10 then to item 11, which is resolution number 134 of 2122, a resolution authorizing a budget transfer and appropriation in the 2022 budget to complete an interfund transfer between the Tax Incremental District 6 Debt Fund and the Redevelopment Authority Fund.
Great, thank you. As Chair had said, that this is for a budget transfer and interfund transfer from the Tax Increment District 6 to the Redevelopment Authority Fund. This actually stemmed from a 1992 TIF Developers Agreement that has clearly been on our books for about 30 years now. At the December 13th meeting, the RDA approved the request from Heartland Properties for a cash payoff of these loans that originally were about $840,000, and the payoff that was accepted was $463,816. The resolution before you will transfer the remaining balance of that loan, which totals about $376,000 from TID 6 to the RDA. The records on this loan on the city side are a little incomplete, I'll say. So this is cleaning them off of our books. The $92,000 are confirmed principal payments that were made directly to the TID, should have been receipted to the RDA right off the bat because that's where the loan was from. But then the other $283,000 is additional increment that they paid into the TID over and above what was required in that developer's agreement. So we're taking the additional increment and making up that difference for the RDA loan to make sure that it's paid off in full and there's no write-off.
Questions or comments? Alder Flick-Pinaski?
Okay. I'm trying to follow the money here. And yes, indeed, the Redevelopment Authority heard this and we agreed to accept the 400,000+. The 92,000, and you just said this, the 92,000 should have come to the RDA and it did not. Okay.
Correct.
And then we did get the 200 and whatever. No. Where did the rest of the money go?
The $283,000 was paid through the taxes through increment. So
Okay.
they paid well above the $283,000 to cover the interest that was on the loan.
Okay.
So the additional increment is what we're saying was additional principal that was created above and beyond what the minimum requirement was. So we worked with the attorney's office to determine that we could in fact use the increment and with the loan documents and everything in place to cover that loan portion in the for the RDA fund.
So does the RDA get the money?
Correct.
Okay, then further down it says the RDA is going to put the money in the general fund and capital improvements fund.
So on the RDA agenda on Wednesday when they meet, they're gonna take up action to pay that money from the Redevelopment Authority Fund back to the general fund to make up for the expenses of buying properties and the debt that's in the Redevelopment Authority Fund. So that's the reference to that.
Okay, there's another level here
Yeah, there
that
is.
is not, okay.
So you'll, not to get in the weeds, but you'll recall that the RDA had bought properties, particularly the
Correct.
Kepsel property.
Correct.
Borrowed the money from
Borrowed
the
the money from the
general
city.
fund. So this money came into the redevelopment authority as a positive, and the negative has been hanging on the fund, so they're gonna pay it back to the general fund so that they're paid off and the general fund is made whole.
Perfect. I agree. That's a great idea. I'll move to accept this.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second then. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Chair votes aye. The ayes have it and the motion passes. Thank you.
That was busy.
We are on to item number 12 now, which is resolution number 137 of 2122. A resolution authorizing the purchase of 5509 Menning and vacant land located east of Menning Road for future use by the city.
So thank you. So this is related to the discussion related to the Gartman farm that we talked about prior. So this is the actual offer to purchase, so just bear with me as I run through some of the specifics. So the land offer to purchase is to purchase 195.46 acres of land, including the homestead at 5509 Menning Road and the land to the north and east of that. Per the offer, the city would purchase the 195 acres of land for $3,675,000 over a 5-year period with payments as follows. When we close, we would pay $900,000. We would then pay $693,750 in years 23, 24, 25, and 26 at the anniversary of the closing. Per the addendum that's attached in the offer, we would pay, starting the first payment in 2022. The purchase price installments would be secured by a first mortgage and a promissory note. The note would bear the interest of the applicable federal rate, the AFR, for a midterm 5-year note. The buyer may prepay upon seller's consent and approval. So there was some discussion about paying this off early and trying to save some of the interest charges. That on the paper doesn't necessarily work for the Gartman family because they will pay significant capital gains. So the seller agreed to the language that should we decide to prepay, we have to get seller's consent to do so. The seller shall have post-closing occupancy of the homestead property, so their property that they live in, at a rental rate of $500 per month until David and Claire die, or Claire's his wife, or their son, or David or Claire die or are unable to stay in the property. So it's whichever comes first. So basically, in the event that David and Claire are deceased and unable to occupy the property, Kevin Gartman, who's their son, would be required to vacate the property. So he won't be able to stay there without them there. And the seller is responsible over the course of the time from closing till whenever this happens for the utilities, renter's insurance, and maintenance of the homestead parcel. The buyer would allow the seller to lease back any portion of the farmland included in the 195 acres. And the buyer, as in the city, would give the Gartmans a 7-month notice to remove the crops and vacate the leased land in the event that development is commencing. The seller is allowed over the 5-year period to salvage and remove any outbuildings, feed bins, and gravel adjacent to the homestead property, and the seller will hold the city harmless and indemnify the buyer against any and all claims related to that. And upon acceptance of this by the Common Council, the city would need to pay $5,000 in earnest money prior to the closing. So we've talked about this property in the IFC. It outlines the area we're talking about, directly north of the city-owned Polf Farm, and trying to develop single-family and or other types of housing to serve the city over the course of the next 10 to maybe as much as 20 years. And working through David Gartman, I think we're all in agreement that this makes the most sense for the city to meet our long-range housing goals. And we're looking for approval and acceptance of this offer.
Questions or comments? Go ahead.
I am assuming that this is all written in contractual language somewhere, because there's a discrepancy in the document in front of us until David and Claire and son Kevin die. And then further along it says David and Claire, if they're deceased, Kevin would be required to vacate. So let's make sure that it's stated in the,
This is what it says in the offer. Seller shall have a post-closing occupancy of the homestead parcel located at 5509 Menning Road, Sheboygan, Wisconsin 53081 at a rental rate of $500 per month until David Gartman and his wife Claire Gartman and the son Kevin Gartman die or are unable to stay in the property or voluntarily decide to vacate the premise, whichever comes first. In the event that David and Claire are deceased or unable to occupy the property or have voluntarily decided to vacate the property, Kevin Gartman should be required to vacate the property.
Well, we're, in the sentence before that, we're saying that Kevin Gartman has to die.
So the language, I will say, is not particularly well drafted, and our office wasn't involved until it was done.
Okay.
But I think as I look at it, the interpretation is, I think we would be able to hold the Gartmans to the idea that once Mr. and Mrs. Gartman have passed away, we would be able to require Kevin to vacate. I think the language here would basically be, he would be able to stay after they die only long enough that it's reasonable for him to vacate. So there may be a little bit of a delay. It wouldn't be upon death, but it would be upon reasonable vacation after death, the way the language is written.
Okay, if the attorneys are happy with it, I'm happy with it, but it was a little fuzzy. And then the final bullet point in the IFC that we have, you might want to, upon acceptable, the city shall be $5,000 in earnest money. It just needs to be
Okay.
English. Thank you.
It's missing the word pay. Sorry.
Cool.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll just throw out there that I'm excited to see what we do with this. This isn't the kind of opportunity we're going to have in front of us often, so I'm glad that we are taking advantage of it while it's available.
Yep.
And with that, we are looking for a motion to approve.
I move to
approve.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, then seeing no further discussion.
Sorry. With the amendment of the amended addendum, which includes an updated list of parcels. So they missed a parcel in the addendum that was attached in board docs. We have gotten an updated addendum from them, but it was not attached, so we're just amending it here as part of the approval. And it missed a little parcel that was 14 acres or something.
Okay, so with amending the amended addendum.
What?
As amended.
What your motion should be, would be to approve the document with an additional amendment to add parcel number, whatever the parcel number is,
You're gonna hold
to the
me?
list of properties being purchased.
I don't know what that parcel number is.
Didn't know you weren't going to attach it to Word docs.
Yeah, so it's parcel 59030454922.
Would you like
Yeah.
to amend your motion
Yes.
to read as just,
So I move to
Stated.
approve with the amendment, with the addition of the amendment for the parcel, with the parcel number, reflecting the parcel number that the director just mentioned.
Yes.
Second.
okay. In that case, seeing no further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Chair votes aye, the ayes have it, and the motion passes. Thank you. Next up, we are on item 13, which is resolution number 138 of 2122. Resolution authorizing the appropriate city officials to execute an engagement letter with Quarles and Brady LLP to serve as bond counsel with regard to general obligation promissory notes.
Thank you again. This resolution is in conjunction with the resolution that was read first this evening with the issuance of the bonds. This is authorizing the agreement to contract with Quarles and Brady for their legal services on the bond counsel.
We reviewed it, it's a standard agreement. One thing that sometimes comes up in these things, and that sometimes gets asked, is there is bond counsel and there's disclosure counsel. Because we have an expert in our office on this stuff, we don't hire disclosure counsel. Obviously, he's only with us 2 more weeks, so we may have to reconsider that in the future, but for this transaction, we're good. Our office will cover the disclosure counsel piece.
Thank you. Questions or comments?
Just a brief one. Do we always hire third-party attorneys for bonds?
Yeah, so Quarles and Brady, we've hired them for a long time to do this work, but a year ago, we actually issued an RFP and offered this to anybody who was interested in performing this work on a regular basis. And as a part of the RFP, we agreed to continue with Quarles and Brady. It's our recommendation in our office that we do that every 3 to 5 years, just so that we take a look at what else is out there. That's actually the firm that our expert in our office is leaving for, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we'll be looking for a motion to approve.
I
to
move.
approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, then seeing no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Chair votes aye, the ayes have it, and the motion passes. And then we have item number 14, which is a direct referral of resolution number 139 of 2122. A resolution authorizing the city administrator to execute a master service agreement and statement of work with Language Line Services Incorporated for on-demand translation services.
Thank you, Chair. So this is as part of the city's Title VI plan. The Title VI plan is part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits discrimination based on the basis of race, color, and national origin in any program or activity that receives federal funds or other federal assistance. So we recently completed the Title VI plan for the city. The transit utility had a Title VI plan before. The city did not have a standalone plan, so that work was done, and it's really related to the American Rescue Plan Act. So when we accepted that $22 million, we brought with it some of these requirements. So one of the requirements in this plan, in the Title VI plan, was that the city needed to have a listing of city employees that could provide translation services to the general public, particularly at our customer service windows, as well as contracting with a service to provide on-demand services that, should the need arise that a city employee can't do it, we have a backup means to provide translation services. So the city decided to proceed with Language Line because the municipal court has had an agreement with them for some time. So it made sense to stay with them. So Language Line is an on-demand and on-site, if needed, language interpretation for document translation and interpretation services in over 240 languages. Most of our translation would happen in a 3-way telephone conversation with the interpreter, the client, and the limited English-speaking person. This master agreement would be used by all city departments. So instead of having departments go out and contract independently, it was decided to do a master agreement for the entire city and have this available at all of the customer service windows and anywhere else that public interaction may occur. There is some charges, 72 cents per minute for a variety of languages, and the company will be providing us with usage reports by department so we can see what the usage is. So the recommendation is to proceed with this master service agreement and statement of work, and that this will be coming out of a common council contracted services item as a ongoing expense year after year to comply with all of the federal funding that we receive.
Alder Flicky-Paneski?
Is this a 1-year contract, 2-year, 3-year?
This is a 1-year contract with options to renew it, should both parties agree.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, I have one.
Go ahead.
Okay, is this like have you budgeted a certain amount? Is there an expectation that, there's, a line that we're going to go to? We're not going to spend more than? How do you figure that out?
Well, given that we have had limited interaction and requests for this in the past, I'm guessing the usage is going to be relatively minimal. So I don't see it as being a huge cost for the city. We have Spanish speaking, we have Hmong speaking, we've got some sign language people that are in-house. So a lot of it is, the services are here already. It really would be for, I would say, the other languages that aren't typically spoken. And I don't see that as being a huge demand because we haven't really run into real situations related to that in the past. So I don't think this is going to be a big cost burden for the city. I think it's just having it available should the need arise.
I'm happy that you're doing it. I just was wondering how you figure out how much money, we're going to spend on that. But I'm happy that it's happening.
I guess what I would say to that, if there is more of a demand out there than what we know of today, which isn't much, we'll have to adjust that on a year-to-year basis as part of the budget process. But if we're going to accept federal funds, it's just a cost we're going to have to incur.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this one?
Yeah, so the cost will be only the one by minute when you use it. It's an ad hoc use. Okay, yeah. I'm very glad that we got there finally.
All right, and then if there's no more discussion, we'll be looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
To approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second then. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Chair votes aye. The ayes have it, and the motion passes. Next up is moving into items for discussion only, starting with item number 15, IT metrics for 2021.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So we'll start with the IT metrics for 2021. Under efficiency, we had a goal of 5 days to close high help desk tickets, and we averaged that, or got that down to be 0.43. We did start, for our last meeting, there was a suggestion that we start to also track the phone calls that come in, so we've been tracking those. That's a large part of why the number dropped to 4.3. I'm sorry, to 0.43. On the effectiveness, we hit 97% with a goal of 90. On maintaining core server network at current firmware versions or one back, we're had a goal of 100%. We're at 99%. We have a couple servers yet that we're working on to get up to that firmware levels. The workload, our endpoints with the FortiGate client installed, that's basically the endpoint protection that guards them against viruses, malware, that type of stuff. We have those 100% protected. The number of legacy applications retired, we retired 6 last year with a goal of 5. Security audits performed. We did not do a security audit last year. We did one in 2020, and we were still working on the results of that and patching, if you will, or addressing those security issues that were found. And then system availability, we did attain the 99% system availability uptime. Going on to the legacy applications, we have listed the 6 applications that we retired last year. I won't go through those all unless there's questions on those. Major accomplishments in 2021, we upgraded our ERP system, Tyler Munis, from version 11.3 to 2019.1. We upgraded our Microsoft Office products from 2010 to 2019. our Exchange email server from 2010 to 2019. We installed a new email archiving system. We implemented Darktrace, which is a network cybersecurity defense system. We enhanced network controls to improve our cybersecurity. Such things there would be improving and increasing our two-factor authentication for people accessing the system. Also, we did continue to work on our infrastructure. We did an infrastructure refresh of our access points and switches. So a lot of our switches that we were replacing were 10 years or older. Same with the access points. So those are now new technology, and we should be set for 5 to 8 years before we need to refresh those again. Any questions?
Alder Flicky-Paneski?
Yes. Could you go over why it went to 0.43? You started counting differently? You
Right.
counted phone calls also?
Right, when I started here, every ticket that came in needed to come through a ticketing system.
Okay.
And we found that we would provide a higher level of customer service to allow people to call us for some of the tickets rather than spending 5 or 7 minutes to send a ticket to us so we could address it. So we've seen quite a large swing to phone calls. I think overall the city staff appreciates being able to pick up the phone and make a phone call to IT versus having to submit a ticket. So once we weren't taking those into account in 2020, we were taking into account in 2021, so that's why we saw the major drop.
So will your goals from 5 days for 2022 change?
Yes.
Thank you.
Administrator Wolf?
Thank you, Chair. Eric, I just wanted to say congrats to you and your team. 2021 was just like 2020 was a struggle getting into the virtual world. 2021 was another opportunity for us to improve and expand. And you and your team did a fantastic job, especially with, the projects that you had listed off, but also the many projects that are in process for 2022. So again, congratulations to you and your team.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that feedback. And I would also like to thank the Finance Committee and the Council for the support they give us to IT. It makes our job a lot easier when we get the support that we get from the city. So thank you.
Just one more, kind of double bunking on that. 37% of the, quote, legacy applications, and I love the term legacy because it means really, really old, are gone. And you're going to keep working on the ones that are, quote, applications remaining?
Correct. Administrator Wolf has already challenged me to get another 37% off the system in 2022, so we're working on it.
Administrator Wolf.
I think we said 38. 37 is net neutral.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you. Okay.
Chair,
Go ahead.
thank you. I'm sorry, but I don't understand that IBMI usage. So can you explain that to me, please?
Sure, once again, we have it's an IBMI, it's a AS400 legacy system where we have these applications still running on it. So the percentage usage is a combination of how many people actually use those applications, how many programs make up that application set, et cetera. So, like PD crime, it was at 20%. Within the PD crime system, there were probably 25 or so people that were actually still using that system. And it was not only the city of Sheboygan, but the county, the Sheboygan Falls, and the Plymouth PD departments all would use that system to look up for open records requests of historical incidents. And in 2021, we provided them a system in which now all that has been archived to PDFs, and they can now look up the incidents via PDFs versus having to actually access this system.
So all these are applications. For example, the code enforcement is an application.
Yes.
I mean, DPW sidewalks move with special assessment. Is that an application?
It was a application, it was a number of programs or system that they use to manage that process.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? If not, sounds like you guys were quite busy last year.
Thank you. Okay, moving on.
Forward to see what 2022 brings.
We're also very excited, thank you. So moving on to the WSCS metrics, also known as our cable TV station. So first to make a correction, the goals say 2020, it should state 2021. My apologies for that. So the number of programs produced, we had a goal of 500 and we hit 649. Once again, we'll probably be bumping that goal up for 2022 since we consistently have outperformed the 500. On the number of PSAs, we had a goal of 9, we produced 1. That kind of ebbs and flows, so we'll leave that goal at 9 and continue to try to produce more PSAs. The number of televised Common Council and Committee of the Whole meetings, and then missed last year, we were successfully able to televise all 32 of the meetings without any major interruptions to that. We had struggled on that in previous years. Part of that was when we were trying to produce over in the county courthouse building. The equipment there was much more challenging. And then when we moved into the new city hall, we had new equipment, which took us a period of time to learn and tweak to get it to where we needed it to be. Under the effectiveness on-demand viewing and on-demand unique visitors, they continue to fall, and you can see them falling over the last few years. The reason for that is that we are seeing a switch from using the video on-demand services that are available through WSCS's website to people viewing our programming on YouTube. So as you look at our YouTube numbers, they are actually going up, but they're being replaced, or this is being replaced by YouTube views, which we feel is a good metric. So probably in 2022, we'll be replacing that to reflect the YouTube views. I think that'll be a more accurate indication of what our views are. In the number of film awards, we received 7 last year with a goal of 8.
Perfect.
And I would just personally like to thank Scott Mealiff, our program director. He's done an excellent job through this whole COVID period and televising many, many, many meetings. So thank you, Scott.
Yay.
I also want to say thank you, Scott, because you are very flexible and you've done a stellar job working with all of our alder persons and, virtual and vendors, things like that. So again, kudos.
Any questions or comments on the WSCS metrics?
What are the PSAs?
Public service announcement. Sorry.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you. And next up, we have 17, the annual report from City Development.
So before we jump into the city development annual report, I just want to state that to what was just said before related to Scott and WSCS, I think what we're seeing is that we have the technology in this room to host other meetings. So groups are coming to us to televise and remote meetings. For example, the Sheboygan Housing Coalition is doing a series of town hall meetings on affordable housing. On Thursday nights, there's another one this Thursday, and they've asked if they could use our resources and we could host them here. So I think it's it's getting out there, and I think it's a good thing for us to be a partner in trying to communicate and get that information out there, especially when you've got conglomerations of groups that don't necessarily have the technology to bring that stuff forward. So thank you for that as well. So moving on to the City Development Annual Report, I handed out copies of it. I'm just going to walk through it. It's attached in board docs. Barb, if you're able to pull it up, you can do so. But basically what I wanted to do is kind of just walk through this report, and you can take it with you. If there is additional questions afterwards, you can reach back out to me. The Planning and Development, or the City Development Department, is made up of two divisions, Planning and Development and Building Inspection. Under the city ordinances, Planning and Development reports to the Finance Committee, and Building Inspection reports to Public Safety. For tonight's purpose, I'm going to walk through both parts of the report, just to, with this committee on both sides of it, and if there's questions, I'd be happy to answer them. So starting on page 1 on the inside, you can see the list of services that the Planning and Development Division handles. I would tell you that the Planning and Development Division is made up of 5 employees. So there's a bulleted list of number of items and a number of boards and commissions that we staff as staff for agendas and minutes and documents. On page 2, a lot of our time in 2021 was spent administering the Small Business Emergency Assistance Program, which was funded through federal block grant dollars at the tune of $420,000. We helped a total of 30 businesses, and in 2021, we aided 13 small businesses with those funds. Moving down, we also received $229,479 in COVID funds from the state to be used for activities in the community. So we worked with Lakeshore Community Health Center, which received $60,000, Habitat for Humanity Lakeside, which received $60,000, Mental Health America received $54,979, and the Salvation Army received $50,000, all of them to help with different expenses related to COVID. So what happened was Coronavirus 1 allocation came to the city, Coronavirus 2 went to the state, and Coronavirus 3 came to the city. So we had to apply to the state and be an applicant to the state, and I would just say that that process was very cumbersome, and it was a lot of work to get $229,000. So we've told our nonprofits they can be thankful that we were able to do that, because the process getting money from the state is actually more difficult than I think it is getting it directly from the feds. On page 3, you've seen this a lot, but there's information on the affordable housing study, which was rolled out, started in the fall of 2020, completed in March of 2021. You can see on that page and read through it on your own the number of housing units and things we need. On page 4, the continued focus on housing, 3 projects were either started or completed in 2021, the Badger State Lofts, which is in the old Badger State Tannery, 118 units valued at $30,500,000. The Oscar development on the Vandervaart property at $47 million for 248 units, and the completion of the Kingsbury Village on the former Kingsbury property for $6 million for 33 units. There's some additional development, the Quick Trip that's being developed as part of the Badger State Lofts, and future bike and ped improvements in pocket parks as part of the Oscar development. On the bottom of page 4, we did a TID 18 boundary amendment, and this was to remove parcels from the TIF district that was created for the industrial park for the South Point Enterprise Campus. The council had approved the removal of those parcels from the district because the TID boundary line had split the parcels. So we just received approval from the state last week on that. On page 5, we've spent a considerable amount of time working with HUD on the Section 108 loan to fund the improvements to the Uptown Social Community Center at the former Save-A-Lot property. We received our first payment last week. of 2 weeks ago of 479,000. So we should have finally everything in order to draw down the $3.2 million, which will be used to repay the city 500,000 and 2.7 million to be used for renovations of that building. On the bottom, the Water Street Hotel development, we executed a developer's agreement and worked with them on redevelopment of the former River's Edge condominiums into the hotel, the two-story hotel, which is 25 guest rooms and is under construction today. On page 6, we just talked about the Shopko redevelopment. And then at the bottom of the page is the pop-up shop winner, which was one of 8 applications we received when we went out for people to submit applications to run a pop-up shop. Six Turtles Boutique opened in 833 Pennsylvania Avenue and has been a great addition to our downtown as another woman's boutique. On page 7, outlines the entire block grant funding distribution. So the council deals with this in the coming months. We'll be dealing with this again. The allocations to the nonprofit organizations, public construction projects, and then the additional CV2 and CV3 funding that the city received, and working with our partners to get that funding out on the table and getting it out to the people in a conservative effort in a timely fashion. The other thing, one of the applications that was on the 400 was managing the city's loan portfolio. The city's loan portfolio is made up of about 350 to 400 outstanding loans between housing and business loans. We took it off of the AS400 and implemented Neighborly software, which is a cloud-based software solution to allow us to maintain all of our housing loans, as well as provide a portal for people to apply online. That has been working very well for us. The number of applications has increased substantially with the fact that people don't have to come to City Hall to get funding. They can do so online. We just rolled out the public service application process online as well, and we also do historic preservation and other neighborhood programs through that portal. So that was a good implementation for us. We're also administering the city's American Rescue Plan Act funds, the $22.4 million that we've received and allocated as previously approved by the council. And then last but not least on page 8 is that development of the Title VI plan under the American Rescue Plan. Talks a little bit more about that. Page 9, we also requested, which we're continuing to wait for, funding through the state for a number of affordable housing projects and Kiwanis Park improvements to the total of $15 million, as well as some tourism-related grants that have not been awarded. And then last but not least on that page is the interagency cooperation on the shipwrecks. So we worked with the PBS Wisconsin and the Friends of PBS Wisconsin and contributed $10,000 to be used towards the programming that they outlined for the Shipwrecks documentary, and provided 15-second commercials on Midwest stations as part of that. So we highlighted the community on exceptional employment opportunities, housing opportunities, and first-class tourism. On the next page, page 10, we worked with the Alliant Energy on the city's first solar farm. That is actually finishing construction and being implemented and turned on in the coming weeks in the city's business center. We worked with the mayor's office on the bird scooters implementation and getting that program going. And then worked with Shoreline Metro and Visit Sheboygan on the first winter event at City Green known as Jingle and Mingle over the holidays on December 4th to encourage people to participate in our downtown shopping experiences. On page 11, Rock the Block 2021 returned with the Habitat for Humanity Lakeside in a neighborhood on the south side, redoing houses and bringing stuff up to code. And then worked with four different muralists in the downtown to bring interactive murals on the side of buildings, really as an Instagram moment for people to take pictures and post about Sheboygan and kind of continue the city's placemaking and community arts. Switching gears on the building inspection side on page 12. So building inspection is made up of 9 employees, primarily responsible for permitting, coordination, and enforcement. You can see on the chart on the bottom is the building inspection permits, the totals collected in 2021. I would say that the total amount of revenue collected was less than previous years at about 300,000. However, the number of permits was higher. So we had a lot of permits, but not at the same value as previous years. We also do weights and measures, which is licensing of all the scales and things in town, and contractor licensing for contractors. So that's all handled through the front office of the building inspection. On the next page, we did a munis, as part of the munis upgrade, there was the code enforcement module, which was updated to get us to be paperless when it comes to issuing code orders and doing more from the field. So that was done as part of the munis upgrade. And then you can see the chart. We just like to show a 5-year average. Of the single duplex multi-apartment and multi-condominium projects over the course of the last 5 years, 91 units in 2021 is less than the last few years prior to that, but it's really about how new developments are permitted, and some of them are permitted under different ways so that they can get around certain building code requirements. On page 14, the code and nuisance orders, you can see the blue charts with the statistics related to that. We continue to have neighborhood beat officers and the code enforcement officers working hand in hand in the south and north side neighborhoods and being proactive in code enforcement and issuing orders and trying to get compliance. We hold a monthly interdepartmental meeting between the different city departments to talk about neighborhood issues and strategize areas that we need to work on more heavily. And on the last page, there's a little bit more about the Munis code enforcement module. It allows us the technology to have our inspectors be able to enter violations from the field and ultimately get to the point of maybe being able to even print the violations in the field versus having to come back to the office. And the last thing, we held 2 landlord training programs in 2021. Typically, we've only held 1, but we heard from people that they wanted more options, so we held 2. We trained about 25 landlords on how to be landlords, what to look for in their properties, how to look for drug issues and those types of things. So we will continue to hold 2 sessions going into 2022. And on the last page, page 15, is a picture of the 14 staff members and their respective titles of the department. So that's it in a nutshell. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
You have a question?
Thank you so much, first of all. And it is such a, it reflects so much of what you guys do, which is a lot. And it's amazing, actually. I'm always very impressed when I see it all together, the same last year, with the document you provided last year. I have just a few little questions. Do we have an estimated date for the Uptown social?
Well, it was originally September. I think we're probably pushing towards the end of the year with supply issues and some of those other things, but as soon as we can get in there, yes.
So
That's
end
the
of
goal.
2022?
Yes.
Okay. And also, the CDBG grant is a regular annual grant opportunity, correct?
Yes, so we get about 900 to $1 million a year, and then it's up to us to allocate it to eligible activities.
And you get it from? from the state?
No, we get it directly from the federal government, so we get it from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Is the CDBG grant only for nonprofits or for any?
So the federal regulations require us that we can't spend more than 15% of the funds on public service activities. So we try to maximize that to get us the closest we can. Typically, it's about $150,000 that gets doled out to the different agencies. Then a lot of it either goes into street projects or park projects or some type of other special project that doesn't necessarily rate very high in the capital projects process.
I have one more question. So the CDBG CV that you received was a second tranche, a second part that you received, an extra one that you received?
Yeah, so the city received $579,000 in the first trench. And that was used for $420,000 went to that Small Business Emergency Assistance Program. And the remainder of that, I don't know, whatever that difference is, we have an accountant here. Anyway, that difference went to nonprofits at the time that were struggling with COVID-related expenses. And then the CV2 we had applied to the state, and that went to those four or five agencies, that $229,000. And then we got another $231,000, and we're working with Lakeshore Cap on a mortgage and utility assistance program that they're administering on our behalf to get money out to low to moderate income people that are struggling to pay their mortgage or their utility bills as it relates to the pandemic.
Okay, thank you.
Chad, I just want to thank you and both of your teams for the tremendous amount of work that your teams do. And I just want to point out that, within these, 15 pages, there's great work here that's done. But there's so much that people don't realize that's still going on day in and day out. These are the ones that cross the finish lines. Mm-hmm. Accordingly, but so many of these projects take years of work before they actually cross the finish line. So, kudos, congratulations to you and your team. Even the code enforcement, it's amazing the amount of work, the neighborhood associations that your team works with, and the growing of those, and just working with neighborhoods and cleaning things up and working with, some of our bad actors when it comes to landlords. So again, congratulations and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
My first observation was, are we tired yet? So, thank you. I work with you closely for redevelopment, and I know what goes on in half of what you do, so I do appreciate it.
Thanks.
I will just say I like that you had the picture of all these staff at the end, because whenever we go over a year's worth of accomplishments, I'm always assuming there are about 2 to 4 times as many people working on all of that over the year as there actually is. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And with that, our next meeting is going to be on February 28th. And we will be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and seeing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Chair votes aye. The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Yay.
Chair.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Hey, thank you.